None of that has to do with NAR. I can figure out how to be profitable in my business without NAR. I can figure out how to, move companies, start a company without NAR. I'm an entrepreneur. This is Byron Lazine and Nicole White, and you are tuned into episode 367 of The Real Word.
Word is up.
It's NAR midyear in DC. So
Surprised you're not there.
I know. I should be there, but I got a lot going on. I'm here in Connecticut with you and the team, and I'm happy to be here. But there's a lot of brokers, a lot of members, a lot of NAR staff all coming together in Washington, D.C. at these, they call it NAR midyear. It's the legislative meetings for middle of the year. And they just kicked off this past Sunday. There's a lot of topics here to get through. They're down there in DC talking DEI, hate speech, which we talked about hate speech last week. I got a little bit of hate on hate speech. I'll address that in the comments here as we move through. Shrinking membership for midyear. Talking DOJ. Well, what's the DOJ after?
There's lots to chat about.
There's a whole bunch of stuff here to talk about. The polarization. There is a comment here. Mm-hmm. They had Scott Jennings, who, I don't know if you know who Scott Jennings is. He's a CNN contributor.
Yeah, I know Scott Jennings personally.
Personally?
No.
Oh, well.
You're like, do you know him?
I was like, really? Can we get him on the pod? So CNN contributor Scott Jennings, I'm going to read a quote before we wrap this pod up. And I actually hope the only person who was listening to this
is him.
Was Nykia Wright,
okay,
CEO of NAR. They had him on their stage. He dropped a quote that, to me, if NAR doesn't take and kind of internalize for the next 6 months, they're going to lose all of the little bit of power that they have left. So really impactful quote there from a CNN contributor, and we'll get into it. Let's start with, one of the things that I don't know why coming out, and this is getting a lot of headlines. Okay, this hate speech stuff that we talked about last week. They're obviously changing and we talked about it last week. They're changing their hate speech rule to be more in line with basically common sense policies. Okay, so NAR Standard of Practice 10.5, it prohibits realtors from using harassing speech. They talked about, hey, the proposed changes, they're probably going to happen. They want a more specific definition of harassment. Okay, that makes sense. What I said last week was their definition's too vague. When you have it too vague, you can get manipulation with agents to ban against another member and claim that something was hate speech that it's not. Now, I want to address something from last week's pod before we move on to all these different topics here. In last week's comments, I saw some agents were saying, hey, Byron, Christianity is not a fringe belief. I want to make it clear. I don't believe Christianity is a fringe belief. My mom is very passionate about church every Sunday. I went along with that. My whole childhood, she goes to this day. She loves church.
Yeah.
I got no problem with religions. Okay. So I want to make that clear. Obviously that's an obvious statement. What I said last week was, when you take something within that, this is back in 2015, so we're still drumming about this from 2015. The pastor from Virginia who was an agent who took a scripture, which if you line up 100 Christians and ask them about that scripture being that divisive against, bisexual people, they're going to call that, just kind of a thing not all Christians believe in. So when I say it's a fringe belief, Christianity is not a fringe belief. When you make these, and I get it, you can post whatever you want. That's the whole point about this topic. I don't care that he posted a religious scripture. That is freedom of speech.
Correct.
Fringe beliefs, I'll say it again, when you go on the fringes, there's going to be an impact to your business. Now, I saw comments, I don't care about the impact of my business. Cool. Don't care. But the market will react how the market reacts. That's my whole thing there. So they're moving forward, it looks like, from the midyear with the changes to their hate speech. Listen, I don't think NAR should be the arbiter of what is hate speech.
Right. Just be good people.
We have laws.
We do.
So now they ask about DEI. Like, listen, does anything have to do with real estate anymore?
I don't think so.
Does anybody notice where culture is going? Is culture moving, Nicole, closer to DEI or away from DEI?
Well, what is DEI?
Diversity, equity, include. Don't act like you don't know what DEI is.
I'm just making sure everyone else does.
Trying to play to the comments. Oh, what's DEI? My head's been up my ass for the last 5 years.
I'm just saying. I just want to make sure everyone knows. We're just we're using acronyms.
Everybody knows this acronym.
Maybe they don't. Maybe
Diversity,
they don't.
equity, inclusion.
I'm just making sure we're all on the same page.
Okay, so DEI, which it's a hiring policy.
Yep.
So Nykia, right? She addressed the rumors that she's dismantling the organization's DEI programs. Quote, I don't know if people see the complexion and recognize me as a woman. See my complexion, she's a black woman, and recognize me as a woman. She said to laughters from attendees in the audience. Quote, but that could not be further from the truth, saying dismantling organizations DEI. What we are continuing to do is internally make sure that we have the best in-class staff to get us through today's transactions and tomorrow's transactions. Okay, good. That's what I want. I just want the best of the best.
Of course.
Working in NAR. Okay, I don't want anybody. Listen, here I'll get beat up in the comments for this. I personally don't want anybody hired based on their diversity features. Okay, I want people hired based. I don't want to hire a woman because she's a woman.
Okay.
I hire lots. You can back me up on this. I hire nothing but women basically in leadership on the real estate company. And if you look at BAM, we have women in leadership there. So, but I don't hire women because they're women.
Based on that, just that sole characteristic.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like.
You want to know what they can add, how they can can make the business better.
I want to know what you can do for the company.
Yeah.
So it never, to me, and I don't think a lot of business people actually do this. I don't think a lot of business people are thinking.
Well, it's interesting because they probably should have also been doing the same thing. And like it was the man's club, right? It's like you just kept progressing within NAR because you'd always been there. You were part of like the fellas.
Look at how many CEOs were white dudes for NAR. So maybe there was a feature of it within your NAR, and maybe Nykia is going to kind of fix that, and she's truly going to get back to, she said, she said on one hand, we're not getting rid of DEI. You can argue that DEI kind of manipulates the system to hire, maybe, I guess it bumps somebody up if there's equal skill set. I don't know. But nobody really has a great definition of how DEI works. But she said she wants the best in class. So that, to me, when you say, she's saying two things. Hey, we're not dismantling DEI, but we want the best in class staff. If you want the best in class staff, you're not worried about how diverse, or are they diverse or not diverse or less diverse or more diverse. You're not worried about gender. You're not worried about any of this stuff. You're just worried about the best.
Right.
Who is the best person for the position?
You're worried about the work.
Worried about the work.
Yeah.
So to me, that would mean, listen, if you just focus on hiring the best, you don't even need a DEI program.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think NAR probably beat me up in the comments again for a second week in a row. I think they probably should dismantle DEI. CEO says they're not, but yet they're going to hire the best. I will say this about Nykia. I hope I get to meet her next week when I'm at Housing Wire. And I hope I can spend some time with her. She doesn't give a clear answer. If you're hiring based on DEI, just say that. If you're hiring based on the best, say that. They do kind of contradict each other. She says things that contradict each other, and I would have pressed her on that had I been asked the question. Here's the next one. Financial concerns. We've been concerned on this pod for a long time with the finances of NAR.
Yeah, I'm sure that this isn't the first time they're concerned. It can't possibly be.
That they're concerned? They've never been concerned. We're concerned. Here's what they did. 2025, NAR budgeted for 1.4 million members. Okay? Now they cut nearly $20 million in expenses as a result. For an example, NAR generates 300. Well, I'll give you an exact number here. They generated $328 million in total revenue from their 990 tax audit for going back to 2022. They cut $20 million off a call at a $330 million revenue stream. And agent count obviously moving, or they're recognizing now that it is moving down. We didn't see a lot of that last year, but now they're saying this year it is moving down.
Well, they're anticipating membership to be to 1.2 in 2026.
Yeah, that's a big drop.
That's a huge drop because what is it? We were at 1.4, 1.5, or just below 1.5 right now.
Yeah, they're planning for 1.4 as a total number for this year. And then they're saying 1.2, Nicole, to your point,
by next year.
For 2026. So if NAR is saying it.
Which makes sense, right?
Well, with some of the moves being made, hey, you don't have to be, you got brokers now saying you don't have to be a realtor.
Right.
And you have a business that has been grinding out a real estate recession for 3 years. There's an impact there as well. So if NAR is saying that this is the projection, it could be lower.
Right.
Because if they're acknowledging what they see coming down the pike, they know who's they have a feel for who might be renewing and who might not be renewing.
Yeah.
This to me is going to be a real number next year, the 1.2 million. So they're projecting $32 million decline in revenue for memberships in 26. Well, you only cut 20 million this year. You're already saying the 1.2 million gives you a $32 million decline in revenue. So you got a $12 million gap right there. You spend $50 million a year on these stupid commercials. I say it all the time.
And we're popping champagne, first class.
Just get rid of the $50 million and you'd be up $18 million on your $32 million projected decline next year. If you're following me with the numbers, it makes sense. You're already $12 million short and you got lawsuits to pay for. So, I don't know. Here's what Wright said, and she's talking about Kevin Sears, obviously president of NAR. Kevin has always said that everything has to be affected in equitable fashion, but we're not going to cripple anything. Fair housing, DEI has not been crippled. Maybe internal NAR DEI should be considered something that gets crippled. Okay, I don't know if we got the money for that. And just where's culture moving? Culture told you at the end of 2024 what they thought about DEI. They don't think much of it.
Yeah.
The market is speaking. People voted DEI out. Cancel culture is over. Okay, it's all this stuff's over, guys. Beat me up in the comments if you want. DEI is one of those things not making a comeback, but NAR hanging on to it, saying fair housing DEI not been crippled. We're just trying to be more strategic and talk to stakeholders and understanding how we are placing our bets. Maybe we should be shareholders, not stakeholders.
Right. Or I just feel like you said earlier, like that's just a word salad just there and how we are placing our bets. It's very again, you can kind of
it's very
assume kind of anything out of that.
Don't worry about what we're doing.
Yeah, we'll take care of it.
We're making we got to be equitable, but we're not tearing anything down, but we will cut some money, but we won't cut enough, but maybe we will.
We're just weighing our options.
You'll find out in a couple years when you see the report on how much we paid ourselves. I'm dying to know. She hasn't said, nobody has said. It'll be public in a year or two. I guess 2 years after she came in last year. I guess maybe a year and a half. We'll see how much Nykia Wright's making on the CEO level. Can't imagine she's doing this for $250,000 when everybody else is making a couple million at the CEO level. Not that I think she should. I'm just saying, just give it out. Just when we get to the Scott Jennings comment, you're gonna understand what I'm talking about. Just give the information to the people. Unfortunately, as part of the settlement, this is Sears now. Unfortunately, as part of the settlement, there was a carve out of approximately 92 or 96 brokerages, so they had to negotiate their own settlement. Obviously, there's a lot of contention with that, and rightfully so. They're upset now. We broke their trust overnight. Hey, I like a lot of what I hear from Kevin Sears. That to me is a straight up authentic comment. We broke their trust overnight. Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, you not only broke their trust, you threw it in their face.
Right.
We broke their trust overnight, and now we're slowly trying to rebuild it. Man, that to me is one of the most sincere things I've heard from an NAR official.
Acknowledging. They're acknowledging what has happened.
Dude, we created this.
Yeah.
We made this decision to save our ass. Our ass meaning NAR. We broke the trust of these brokers, trying to slowly rebuild it. Man, that I give Sears credit for that. Okay, now, unfortunately, I mean, he's going to be out. He's got the rest of this year, and then they're going to have a new president. I hope the next president has basically, I think Kevin Sears has done. Now, he's played the game too. I've had him. There's a couple things he didn't answer exactly the way I wanted when we did our interview last year.
The way you wanted.
Meaning just like give me an answer.
Okay.
Like saying, well, that's in, talking about salaries, that's in Nykia, right? Her decision. But when she was asked on stage, maybe at Inman or somewhere,
she said it was his.
She didn't say it was his, but she wouldn't answer the question.
Yeah.
I mean, is there anybody available to answer the question? So he said, one thing we heard loud and clear is don't increase dues, and we can't do it. If they can't do it on their end, then we shouldn't do it on your end. Anyways, there's that one. The three-way membership. Here's another something that came out. NAR at the midyear continued to address the importance of its three-way membership. It's currently under, several lawsuits. Some of these lawsuits don't necessarily have the teeth of making NAR make a move. But here's what NAR says. Local associations, they're the boots on the ground. They're the main point of contact. State associations, they back up the local associations. And looking ahead, Nykia Wright, CEO, says NAR wants to be the base camp of the industry. Regardless of what company you work for, at the end of the day, you should always be able to come back to NAR and understand how you can move to your next company. And how you can move to the tier in terms of profitability and how you can start your own. None of that has to do with NAR. I can figure out how to be profitable in my business without NAR. I can figure out how to, move companies, start a company without NAR. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't come to NAR to figure out LLC and S Corp affiliation or management or structuring. I don't come to NAR to figure out how to get W-2s, and I don't come to NAR and how to manage agents. You don't have the goods, okay? I'm an entrepreneur. I figure this stuff out. I come to NAR for creating protection for consumers, advocacy. I don't need NAR to figure out how. You're a nonprofit. You don't know anything about profitability, NAR. I'm going to come to a nonprofit to figure out profitability in my business? You're a laughingstock. The reason the three-way membership agreement works for you is you get $2.5 million at CEO level as a nonprofit when you have a three-way membership. When you have a monopoly over not customers, not consumers, but the agents themselves in a three-way membership without choice, you still have a business. Without it, you don't. That number, 1.4 million down to 1.2, that without the three-way, I've said this, it plummets. We're on the same page, I think, on this. I don't see this number plummeting in the next couple of years if three-way stays in place.
Correct.
That's what they have.
That's all that they have, yeah.
They have
you
the
feel
three-way.
good now? You feel better? Look at you. You had to get that all out.
I'm going to take profitability. Now, listen, you could argue, they generate a lot of money. They buy bottles of wine. They do stupid commercials. But they have that. What they do isn't relatable.
It's
okay?
interesting because I feel like that's the first time that I've ever heard NAR say that that's what their value is.
They just say things all the time.
I've never even heard that stance on their side on that.
They just say, regardless of what company you work for, at the end of the day, you should always be able to come back to NAR and understand.
So if I wanted to open up like a pet store.
Well, real estate, and understand how you can move to your next company, how you can move to the next tier in terms of profitability, how you can start your own board. That's the North Star. We're the base camp of the industry. No, your advocacy for consumers, for what these idiots in the same town you're doing your midyear on both sides of the aisle don't understand. They don't understand the business. You're the agent for the agents to articulate to the morons in Congress what's going on in the world, okay? That's what you're there for. All this other crap that you think you can do better than the great entrepreneurs in this business, you can't do it. You're not capable of teaching these great brokers profitability. You're a nonprofit. All right. Here's something else. Kevin Sears, wish I was in the room for this. Again, I do think Kevin is recent leadership, current leadership, probably the most authentic leader, at least tries. NAR President Kevin Sears was asked a question by Byron Menke. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name. Got your first name.
Nailed it.
I mean, great first name.
Great name.
Broker.
Nailed it.
He's a broker owner. Says the DOJ seems to be on us like a dog with a bone, and it doesn't seem to be going away. This was posted in an article in Inman, and he goes on to say, if we have such good advocacy relationship with our legislators, dude, great framing of the question. Hey, you're saying our power in the past has been advocacy. If we have such a good advocacy relationship with our legislators and we do such a good job, why does that not transfer over? And why are we not putting some pressure there, meaning legislators to DOJ?
That's all that we want them to do.
Yeah.
That's all we want them to do.
Figure this thing out. Menke, he's the chair of NAR's Broker Engagement Council. They met Monday. And they invited Sears into this meeting. You have all these subcommittees, sub-meetings that happen at this thing.
Sounds like fun, yeah.
Some have martinis.
I bet you they do.
Nicole might want to get involved now. DC, expensive hotels.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Sears says, yeah, doesn't translate much, quote unquote. According to Sears, NAR had a rocky relationship with the DOJ last year. That's been covered in length, okay? Sears told attendees he had met with the DOJ twice in Washington, D.C., and, quote, there was a clear lack of understanding of how we do business by some of the people that were there in the room. They think we could take advantage of the consumer. Sears went on to say, we protect the consumer. Without the consumer, we don't exist.
Correct.
Why are we going to take advantage of them? So we explain to them about that. So, punchline, DOJ's issue is, quote unquote, they think we make too much money. DOJ has an issue with the industry because they think we make too much money. We make too much money. That's it. I said I represent 1.5 million entrepreneurs who choose to wake up unemployed every day.
Every day.
But it's through their hard work by representing their clients and consumers that they can earn a living. Agents, we all want and need more listings. We want to be able to capture the business from our clients. So it means we need to stay in front of them, front and center when they're thinking about real estate, when they're making a real estate decision. That's why I love what Reminder Media is doing for agents across the country, producing high quality physical and digital magazines where you can tell a full story about what's going on in your community, what's happening in the market, and reminding people that you are the expert that they should be reaching out to when it comes to making a real estate decision. Reminder Media is a resource that you need in your corner to stay in front of your clients. You also get a free sample magazine by using the link that I'll put right down below. Check out Reminder Media and everything that they have to offer you and helping you stay in front of your clients. This way of thinking inside the DOJ is absolutely ridiculous.
Crazy.
The attorneys involved in the lawsuit got 35% of the fee. Tanya,
they probably had a salary too, and then they got that. You know, like you think about other commission-based, like you have a salary.
well, the attorneys they have a salary, but the law firms don't have a salary in a lawsuit. They get this big chunk of money, the 35%. Tanya Monestier said, and she went, the one from Buffalo University.
Yeah.
She had a brief submitted recently arguing the plaintiffs in the Sitzer-Burnett case did not have standing to pursue industry practicey changes. She's looking for the lawsuit to be thrown out.
I love this. Let's go.
Well,
pop the popcorn.
she's looking for it to be thrown out. And if the appeals court agrees, the settlement could be tossed out. But then we're back to square one. So then there's going to be like they'll come back for a retrial in
Yeah, it's like
different
the
ways.
Karen Reed trial. It's so so invigorating.
Now, she thinks a couple of things, though, here. She thinks that they shouldn't change industry standards. Doesn't mean that she thinks that they should necessarily be. Another thing she argued, the damages were too low. Okay, so she thinks the damages should have been higher for plaintiffs, and that the attorney fees, which totaled 1/3, 35% of the $1 billion settlement fee, were too high. So she thinks the attorneys in her appeal, she's a law professor, whether this appeal
isn't
goes
that
through.
standard practice?
For attorneys, yeah, they all get 33%. She thinks that was too high. I don't understand DOJ. You don't think attorneys make too much on that deal, but you're talking 10 times less.
Oh yeah,
or
we're
more,
talking about like
$1,200
on like a house. Yeah,
is the ability to freely. Why do consumers hire agents? They don't want to do the work the agent does. They're trading what they're paying, the compensation, for the work, knowledge, skill set, service that the agent has. They don't want to play catch up. You got a 10-year, you got Nicole's 15 plus years experience. You don't want to play catch up on 15 years. In-depth knowledge of the town that we're sitting in. Been here her whole life. Okay. Doesn't want to play catch up on that type of knowledge. I'll pay Nicole, compensate Nicole for her knowledge and her ability to just do the work that I don't have the time to do.
Right.
That's the trade-off. Nicole's she's not a charity case. Only when it comes to her kids. She's not going to do this for free. So there's a trade-off there of service. Why? Listen, the agent for Patrick Mahomes, the agent for Jalen Hurts, they make like 10% of these contracts.
they're making some money. Yeah, Kris Jenner, dude, baller.
Kris Jenner making 10% on all her
kids.
Okay, instead of being a charity to your kids, do what Kris Jenner did.
Yeah, charge them.
So a percentage of the deals that are being made. There's a salary cap in football. So you would say you don't need, there's tiers of how much they can make. It's set up. They make a certain amount. Why do they even need an agent? Because they don't want to do the negotiation. They're going to be too emotional.
They don't need one. Then don't use one.
They use an agent because they don't want to have those communications with the team. They want to play for the team. They don't want to get into the nonsense. They want somebody else to do that. Even though their salary's set. Patrick Mahomes is getting the max contract if he wants it. Well, I want my agent, even at 10% clip, to do it. DOJ, do they make too much? Here's what DOJ is saying. DOJ thinks that consumers, listen up, they think you're dumb people. They don't think you're intelligent. They think they should create everything for you. Ever hear of this? It's called communism. Okay? We'll set the terms of everything so that people don't have to think, so that people can't negotiate the best deals for themselves. So they don't have freedom in the marketplace. That's what the DOJ is saying here. And so I agree, obviously, with what Kevin Sears said. Hey, they think we make too much money. I walked him through. Now, that was last year. He went on to say, I'm cautiously optimistic of this year. So if anybody is reporting on this, he paused. He said, ultimately, I'm looking for is world peace. So he's basically saying, hey, we got a new administration. This is what he's saying in plain English. We have a new administration. Maybe they're having some influence on this DOJ, and they're not as dumb as the last one that was kind of parroting some of this DEI crap from the last one.
You don't even know it either.
It's like, guys, a lot of the crap that was working not working anymore. And so I think hopefully Kevin's right. Maybe the DOJ wakes up and kind of changes tune on some of this stuff. They are still involved in CCP. CCP is a dead issue to me. NAR made up the rule. They backed off of it now with their updated rule, and the rules are going to come. The rules are going to come from Zillow.
Yeah.
No, they set the rules because if you don't follow their rules, Nicole,
you're off.
What are you going to do? You're going to tell your seller, "Hey, listen,
You don't need Zillow. Who needs Zillow?
I don't follow their rules, so we'll just skip them.
We're going to skip it.
We'll skip 60% of the buyer traffic. You cool with that?
Yeah, let's skip it.
So who has power in this industry? There's nothing that NAR can do that impacts 60% of how buyers see inventory. There's nothing NAR can do that impacts, how you can market and position a home for a seller.
Right.
But Zillow can.
Yeah.
And they can do it more than anybody else. So when they make a rule, pay attention. When NAR has comments at their midyear in DC about what they're going to do with DEI, they're buying time. They're buying time on the three-way. They haven't figured out what works. Scott Jennings knows what works. They had Scott Jennings, CNN contributor, on the stage. And here's the comment. There's an erosion in trust in big institutions. NAR, you should understand this over the last couple of years. Many Americans have lost trust in institutions. That includes the government. Look at the last election. That includes media. Look at polls on media and where people are paying attention. It's podcasts over media. And it's corporations. And that's been brewing for years. This is what Scott Jennings, CNN contributor, said. This can make it harder for people to see the full picture. Quote, so to me, the biggest change is that how we get our information has completely changed. End quote. The biggest change is how we're taking in information. That's the big change. Yet NAR wants to speak at their mid-year, at their annual, do 12-minute talks on a couple of different stages and not answer questions. Kevin, I give you credit as the president. You're willing to be authentic. Doesn't change culture within an organization, a nonprofit that wants to chase too many rabbits. They need to cut costs, send Elon in there, doge the thing, and focus on consumers only and being able to articulate what's good for them to legislators. All the other crap that you do needs to be carved out. And if you want members to back you and fund what's important, then you'll start speaking on the platforms that matter.
Absolutely. Start communicating.
BAM podcasts, other podcasts, long form. Tell the attorneys.
Not the 200. What did she have? 200 people on her live streaming.
They do webinars that get 300 people. You got 1.5 million members. I could get I'll get more than 300 views on this podcast. I could get 300 people in a second on IG.
Yeah.
Your NAR, you should be able to muster up more than three. Listen, start being. Why does BAM, had success the last couple of years? Because BAM,
you were communicating information. You were providing information that people didn't know that they
on the platforms
that
people pay attention to. But the communicators of the information are people in it.
Yeah.
Doing it.
Right.
Okay. Year to date, 316 transactions. Year to date. 5 months in. That's the Connecticut business. I know there's a lot of gurus and coaches out there that want to talk about it because they sold 10 homes 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. We're in it. We're doing it. Eric, the broke agent, built the biggest organic, never paid for followers. Inman, love you guys. Never paid for social media. Built the biggest organic channels ever, all time. You want to learn something about social? Might be the guy to do it.
It's the guy.
It's him. It's Sirhant.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the guys that have built the two biggest platforms. And I'd argue that if you're looking for specific, listen, I was just on Ryan. I love Ryan. But you got probably a lot of 17-year-old girls, maybe.
You think?
Good-looking guy, Bravo star. Lot of industry people too. I'm just saying,
I think there's
him and Eric have done it at the highest level.
Right.
You want to understand what's worth? Eric posts on his account. Haley's not posting on the broke agent account. I'm about to be posting on my accounts, but that's all. Not posting on the broke agent account.
Yeah.
He's doing it. So everybody can relate to that. There is a platform for NAR to be able to speak directly to its members. And if you do that, like Jennings said, you had him on your stage for a reason. If you do that, maybe you'll have the trust to push forward and have a place in this industry, because right now Zillow has the power. You don't. You get to decide how you move forward from here, from this mid-year. You heard the message from Scott Jennings. I second it. And that should be the advice that you take moving forward.
Feel good?
I feel
Feel
not that good because I don't think they'll do anything. But
who knows? I mean, like you said, though, it's interesting that they brought him on there. And that was like, well, we have to, but again, they maybe weren't listening to. I
mean, he's right in DC. I think he works out of DC for CNN.
Yeah.
Listen, I think that's a great conversation. I think,
We got some peeps down there. Maybe we can get some intel on it.
Probably paid him $40,000 to say that. Are you going to listen? Okay.
Listening, yeah.
If you spend $30,000-$40,000 for Scott Jennings.
I'm like, it's
Scott Jennings didn't do it for free.
And start listening. Yeah.
Scott Jennings didn't do it for free.
No, I imagine not. Well, you wouldn't have done it for free, so.
I would have done it for free because I'd be NAR stage. I'd be happy to share my thoughts on NAR stage. So you spent money on this talk.
Yeah.
Why don't you take the advice instead of the members? All right, guys, keep it real. That's what we do. NAR, you can start keeping it real if you take that advice. We'll see what happens.
Let's go.